Cassie, I know you like Shaft, but God, do I have such a weird relationship with them and their camera angles and their colors, and I don't know how I feel about Shaft having my baby over here, taking care of it. I don't know if I could trust this babysitter. I don't know if it knows how to change diapers. I don't know if it knows how to handle such beautiful and subtle character expressions and utilization of colors. I don't know. And now I'm like, the second season, I'm like, Cammy, how do you feel? Because this is fucking beautiful.
Everyone, welcome back to Annie Chatbox. You're tuning in to episode 78. My name is Cammy, and I am your host today. But of course, I am not alone. I am joined by one of my besties for life, and her name is Cassie.
Oh, damn. That's a long-time life commitment. Damn. Hot damn.
Well, I think we're pretty locked in at this point.
I've never had something so beautiful said to me.
And her very special, loving, wonderful, one and only, Dom. Say hi. Welcome to the podcast.
I'm back again. This time a little less against my will, but...
Quite enthusiastic, actually.
Good. I'm glad the ball and chain isn't tied on in the background this time. Oh my goodness. But we are here today to give you another good episode. Before we get to that, let me drop you our social links. Check us out at twitter.com/AnnieChatbox. Send us a mail at anniechatmail@gmail.com. Listen to us at iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, TuneIn, or SoundCloud. And if you would like to donate a little bit to us, help keep the lights on, you can do so at patreon.com/Annie Chatbox. That said, Sarah, CorpsyAnn, Carol, thank you for the little bulb that keeps us lit up even on those darkest days.
Oh.
We love you.
That's precious.
Man, it's true. She is a joy and a wonder, and you should check out her YouTube channel. It's CorpsyAnn at YouTube. All right, guys. I've had a pretty not so good day, but I am so excited to be here with two very wonderful people, and we have a review today of a show that is very near and dear to my heart. So look forward to that. But we have to have a main topic because it's not a double up today.
Nope. Nada.
But that's how we do it. I mean, it's on and off. So main topic, double up. You know, we gotta keep it spicy.
It's kind of a double up. We're talking about a second season.
I like it. I like it a lot.
Yeah.
But before we get to that, we had a conversation spark just naturally before this that is leading into an interesting topic that is just going to be us talking about sometimes how we have been deterred from a show based on maybe the subject matter or characters being expressed in a way that kind of rubbed us the wrong way a little bit. And by whatever means that came about, we will explain it to you. It's just going to be pretty free-form convo, no real pressure here. It's one of those lackadaisical good episodes. But for an example, to get us started, I will say that something that I have a hard time swallowing in probably just media in general is bullies, particularly a kind of possessive sort of bully, because it makes me think back to just some bad experiences I had in the past with like friendships when I was really young. So a lot of times if I find a character gives a sort of behavior that shows them to be a bit of a bully, then I get a little turned off. And probably the first and most vivid example of this for me was seeing the way that Haruhi Suzumiya behaved in The Melancholy of Haruhi Suzumiya, which is that she just entirely is very self-centered about her ideas, and she doesn't consider anyone else's, like, not only interest, but level of comfort into what she is doing. She has just been shown to put a lot of the characters under a lot of not only mental stress, but even like physical assault, like when it came to Mikuru in the series. Yeah, and I did watch through that whole show. I think it was because at the time it was like one of the, super big, like, well-known popular shows. And I think I kind of stuck it out being like, when am I going to like this? Like, when is it going to get better?
Oh, yeah, totally.
Yeah, and there were things that I did like about it. There were characters I like, but Haruhi herself, I just can't stand. And I didn't really watch a lot of season 2 either because she didn't change. She just kind of stayed stagnant.
I remember that there was a scene, I can't remember if it was I think it was in the second season, where one of the characters gets just entirely fed up with her and almost, like, hits her. And it's one of the few times where I was like, yes, please slap her. Like, I'm not typically, like, somebody who condones violence for the sake of violence, but I was just like, good God. So yeah, I can kind of understand. I'm not a big fan of her either.
She was asking for it at that point. Like, I think I remember that scene. She was just yelling and, like, would not relent. And I'm like, I feel you, Kyon. I feel you.
Yeah. I get kind of uncomfortable with those kind of situations as well, especially, like, when you said, like, there isn't growth. I know that, like, for example, like, for a recent example, a lot of people feel that way about Bakugo from My Hero Academia.
That's a really good one. I didn't think about it because I guess for whatever reason, and I know exactly why. I think it doesn't always resonate with me with Bakugo. It used to a little at the beginning, but then it was just so over the top to me that I was just like, he's just an emotionally constipated child, and I'm taking it for being humorous. But I can totally see why people are uncomfortable with his character.
Yeah, and he had growth, and
it's true.
That's character development, and a lot of characters like Haruhi Suzumiya didn't have that development. But I feel Bakugo did. And a lot of people will be like, well, it doesn't matter if he had any development. He was a bully at the beginning. So, like, everybody has their levels of comfort. Were you going to say something?
Oh, I was just going to say that me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I don't like Bakugo, but I've only watched 2 episodes, but every time I see this character, I'm just like, wow, what a fucking asshole.
Two episodes in, I don't blame you at all. No. But speaking of another one that didn't grow, did you want to maybe talk about someone from a show about a little sister who's honestly not that cute?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I was not a huge fan of Kirino from, and it's become like this meme in our group of friends where people will, like, bring up Kirino just to piss me off. Which is fine. It's just a joke. We actually started playing a game recently. What is the call of it? Dengeki Bunko? Fighting Climax something or another. Yeah. And you can play as Kirino, and Pete purposely keeps playing as her just to piss me off.
What?
Yeah. And it's fine. Like, I don't see her and, like, get upset, like, really upset. It's just, like, I find that she did not grow as a person at all. And much like you, I just kept myself watching for some goddamn reason. And I don't
see if she would.
I don't know. Yeah, maybe that was it. And it just, I couldn't get behind it because similar to Haruhi Suzumiya, she belittles people around her for her own benefit. And then afterwards, it feels like she didn't learn. She did have a little bit more growth than Haruhi did, though. But it wasn't good enough to justify how she was acting.
Yeah, I think the scene for me with that is just that, I mean, the fact of the matter was that she was hiding a part of herself, so she would be honest to herself with this group of friends, but then as soon as somebody, like, turned around and is like, oh, what are you doing? She completely abandoned any earnesty to the people that accepted her for who she was.
Yeah. That pissed me off.
And she never apologized.
Nope. Do you have a pet peeve, honey?
A pet peeve?
I guess. Or like a character trait you're not fond of, or something that turns you off about a show?
This is kind of broad. Like, I'll drop a lot of shows just because I'm like, this is stupid. I don't want to watch it anymore. Or, I'm just like, this is not really my thing. Or, it has too much sand. Or something like that.
That was a direct attack, and I came here to have a good time, and I feel so attacked right now.
But, if I have to think of, like, an actual pet peeve or, like, a character thing, I don't really like... I guess one thing that'll really turn me off a show is, like, I guess helpless female characters.
I can get that.
Like, unnecessarily helpless, or, like...
Yeah.
Or, like, I don't want to use the word useless, but I guess, like...
Do you have an example?
The most recent one that I can think of that kind of turned me off is, one of the newer Gundam shows, Iron-Blooded Orphans. There's, like, one of the main heroines is, like, a princess or something from some nation. And basically her whole thing is that she's trying to do a bunch of political stuff. And I only watched the first 10 episodes because I didn't like that show and I dropped it.
That's fair.
The character in question, like, I really like her design and, like, what she wants to do, like, her goal. But the entire show just kind of has her in this sort of, like, helpless, like very inactive kind of role.
She can't do anything for herself.
Yeah, basically kind of like that. Or, you know, she's put into situations where, like, she's very just helpless, I guess, and unable to do anything of note, and that annoys me. Mm-hmm. And so I'll drop a show if I feel like that's not going anywhere. But I have a really good example, but it's not an anime.
That's fair. Go for it.
That's okay.
But there's a Kamen Rider show, and I mean it's particularly for boys, obviously. But in one of the shows, there's, like, these two female characters who want to use, like, one of the suits to basically power up and fight the monsters or whatever. And the show is, like, continuously denying them this opportunity for no particularly good reason. And, like, it's, like, it'll give the suits to the male characters and stuff who don't have as much of a stake in what's going on as the female characters. And then continuously deny them the, ability to use these, like, suits to, like, actually fight or do what they want to do. And, like, it just makes me so angry, like, every time I was watching that show. And I dropped it fairly quickly because of that. But yeah, that's, like, one of the main things that will piss me off in a show. That's fair.
I'm not particularly fond of that either. I know that one of the things that... I mean, granted, I wasn't a huge fan of Sword Art Online to begin with. But in the first season, the second half of the show, one of the characters who they made into, like, at least mildly a strong female character, they just side-shafted to make her a princess in a castle who couldn't fight for herself. And it was very frustrating.
It's funny because I never watched all of Sword Art Online. I just kind of caught a couple random episodes. Like, I think I saw the design for Liz. Is she the pink-haired one?
Yeah, and, like, that entire show, now I think about it, is basically makes most of the female characters helpless unless Kirito can help them. So that did actually, like, kind of frustrate me quite a bit. I think it just made me even angrier in the second half because you finally gave me a character who I was like, yes.
That's a good thing I dropped in the first episode.
That's fair. I mean, like, the first 3 episodes are pretty good, I think. Especially because one of my favorite episodes of Sword Art Online, the 3rd episode, centers around a girl who's trying to be stronger. And trying to find herself as a person, and Kirito gets close to her. And they both realize, like, that they can learn from each other to be stronger people emotionally. And then a thing happens that I guess I'm not going to spoil, even though Sword Art Online is several years old now. But...
Oh, it's that one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like, in that one, I was fine with it. And then it follows up with, like, 3 more episodes of helpless female characters who can't do anything for themselves. It's very frustrating.
And they were interesting. Like, I checked out Liz's episodes because they were really interesting. But, like, by the end, where they placed her in the show, I was just super pissed off. And I was like, why you do this with good characters?
Yeah. That's another reason why I tuned out in the 2nd season, too. Because I started to pick up the 2nd season of Sword Art Online, which was basically, like, Kirito was put on the back burner for the most of the first half of that that show, to focus on a female character who had PTSD and got really good at a game trying to conquer her PTSD and be a stronger person for it. And I was like, oh, this is so fucking cool. And then, of course, they shipped all the, you know, character focus to Kirito, and he ends up saving her, too. And I'm like, okay, whatever.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Dom. Now that I think about it, I think I have a similar sense where I think more in like the common writer example of what you were talking about. If a show is like blatantly not utilizing female characters, like biased as compared to male characters, that will also turn me off, and I probably won't watch it. Mm-hmm. That's a good point. I hadn't even thought about that.
Yeah, like, oh, this person could serve a purpose, but you're just not letting her specifically because she's female.
Yeah.
That's pretty frustrating.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't tell me that, like, you can't have strong female characters in a show targeted towards boys, because there's great, like, female characters and things like Yu Yu Hakusho and Hunter x Hunter and stuff like that. Granted, they're much fewer in number, but they definitely can sometimes even give a lot of the boys a run for their money, which is pretty neat. And I know that My Hero Academia has come under for some reason, fire about, like, apparently not appreciating female characters, but I don't agree with that, really.
What?
Yeah,
I don't agree with that at all.
And you know what? That's another thing that maybe we should have said at the beginning. These are just our personal opinions. If you don't agree with them, you're fine. You can love or hate whatever you want. But yeah, I listened to a conversation, with some other people where they said, oh, My Hero Academia is blatantly sexist. And I was like, how so? And they were like, well, of course, like, almost all of the female characters have support quirks. They don't have, like, offensive quirks like the boys. And no female made it to, like, the finals in the arc where there is a tournament of sorts, without going to super spoilers. And I was like, that doesn't mean they didn't have arcs or growth. And if anything, one of those characters goes on to kick a lot of ass. So I don't know. I don't agree with that. If anything, I think there's a lot of female empowerment in that show. But that's just my personal thoughts.
I think it's one of the more impressive of, like, the Shonen Jump series. Granted, I don't, like, dive into a bunch of Shonen Jump stuff, but from the stuff that I have seen, and, you know, like, seeing Naruto and Bleach and stuff like that, I think My Hero, like, skyrockets with the female development and representation, but yeah, to each their own. You had an interesting story about Psycho-Pass, though, that I'm actually curious to hear about.
That's another thing that I've gotten a little bit better, and that's another thing, like, your taste can change and your, sensitivity to things can change.
True.
And I've been meaning to go back and give Psycho-Pass another try. But all of the spoilers I'm going to talk about are in the first episode, because I dropped the show after one episode because this happened. When rape is not done tastefully in anime, I get very upset. And it's very hard to say that something does rape tastefully, because it's not a tasteful thing. But
that's a good point.
But to me, tastefully representing something like that is saying, okay, this bad thing happened, but we're not going to glorify it, fetishize it, or anything like that. Psycho-Pass doesn't do that, but as somebody who is a victim of some, like, you know, things that I don't really want to talk about, but people who are, like, triggered by stuff like that, a lot of rape victims, domestic violence victims, victims in general of anything, will often find themselves blaming themselves. Like, that's just something that psychologically happens. And in the first episode of Psycho-Pass, the whole point of Psycho-Pass is they can tell, like, whether you're going to be extremely emotional or a criminal. So they put you out or take you out or, like, put you in prison or whatever, based on what they can detect what you might be able to say or do, or might do something bad, whatever. There's a young lady who's raped in the first episode of the show by a gentleman. And by the end of the episode, because she has been raped and brutalized, she's off kilter. And so they basically point a gun at her, making the entire situation seem like it was her fault. To me, makes it seem like you're trying to punish a rape victim.
Yeah.
Which to me, like, rubbed me a super bad way. So I immediately dropped it. I was so angry. Like, I had to leave the call I was in. Because I was so upset about it. Looking back on it now, I'm like, okay, the point that they're trying to make is that this is a horrible thing. That she's, you know, being, like, a victim is being made out to be a criminal. I think that's the whole point of the show and the point they're trying to make. But at the time, I just thought it was extremely distasteful.
Yeah. Yeah, I could totally see that.
Mm-hmm.
Ugh.
I was not a big fan.
Yeah, there's There's just a lot, I mean, and that even for everybody, like you have your level of sensitivity and like content that is just like could be traumatic. And I mean that comes up in anime, that comes up in like any media. So it is interesting to just have to wade through that. I do agree with what you said though about like how your sensitivities can change, because that's pretty much why I was a bit hesitant on Kuzu no Honkai, because the main character exhibited just some behavior that reminded me of somebody that I knew, but I was able to kind of temper it between knowing that, like, you know, in the narrative this is going to be tackled, like they don't start out as good people, like that is the point.
Mm-hmm.
And there is like a narrative reason for doing so. So I mean, I can relate on that degree. It's looking at your impact like initially and then seeing like the narrative intent for something.
Yeah. It's just kind of like if you're going to have something like that, there needs to be a point.
Yeah.
And like, for example, like in the example you gave a while back, like if it had been with the Kamen Rider show, and now I haven't watched it, but for me, like that would have pissed me off too, except for if later on that was, you know, pointed out to show like, oh, it's not fair that women are treated this way, or like used in some sort of metaphoric way. I know that that's not where it went, but that would have made it okay for me. Because Dominic's shaking his head over here. I'm just saying, like, that's where things become a pet peeve for me, is when they don't do it for a reason. Gratuitous violence against people and children and animals is another thing that I'm like, okay, what's the point?
Yeah.
Oh,
I will never watch Elfen Lied.
Gratuitous violence against children is a no-no for me.
Yeah.
I can handle animals sometimes, but children always, I can't. Mm-mm. That's another reason.
Yeah.
I was reading this manga. It has an anime, but people usually don't recommend the anime. It's called Bokurano.
Oh!
Yeah.
Oh!
I watched the first few episodes of that.
Yeah, so I read like half of this manga. And every kid, like, because, you know, each kid has to kind of like be the lead pilot of the robot or whatever. And every kid that it like progressively gets to, and each one, like, it's just, like, the manga was bringing me down so much with each, like, scenario that these kids were put into that I was just like, I can't keep doing this. And I don't know, like, I don't have, like, a source on this or anything, but I've heard that, like, the guy who wrote it is, like, really just not a fan of children at all.
What?
Yeah, like, and that's part of the reason, like, he might have, I mean, don't quote me on that, but...
Okay, yeah, no.
Maybe we can do some research into it later.
Yeah, that's just what I've heard.
Hearsay.
In down the grapevine. But yeah, I mean, just the actual manga itself, like reading it, I was just like, nah, this is too much for me. I like kids too much to
Yeah.
to, like, willingly partake in this for anymore.
Yeah, so, like, and especially if it's not for a purpose, if it's just, like, gratuitous, like, what's the word for it? Like, tragedy porn.
Yeah.
Basically. Like, that's all it's there for. Instead of to prove a point, that's also something that I have a hard time. Like, for example, a lot of people have trouble getting through Higurashi no Naku Koroni. And originally I did too, because, like, it just seems like that's all it is glorified torture porn, basically. In the first season, that's most of what it is. It's like, oh, it resets who's gonna die this time, and in what terrible way. Let's go rip off some fingernails. Like, but when I got through the whole show, I was like, no, all of this was to serve a point.
Yeah, there's like a whole reason why everybody goes cray, right?
Yeah, there
like,
is.
No spoilers,
and I'm not going to spoil it. Please go watch that show if you can handle it, by the way, guys. It's pretty good. I mean, I own the box set, all 3 of them.
Hey.
I don't like how blatantly sexualized the spin-off Ray season was, or whatever. It was just stupid. But the first 2 seasons are like a masterpiece and very good, and one of the better psychological thrillers we got in anime, because anime doesn't seem to do horror or psychological very well.
That's true.
Most of the time, except for, you know, exceptions like Higurashi and Monster. But when they try and do horror, I don't find it particularly scary or thought-provoking most of the time. It's more I'm just watching it for the edge.
You actually reminded me of another one that I did watch, but it was very hard for me to get through, and it was an episode of Hellgirl that for anybody that doesn't know the premise real quick, it's just like people in the world are awful, and you can go onto this website and summon Hellgirl, and then Hellgirl will punish the people that are bad in the world, but then the person who summons her and like has this wish for the person to be punished, they like have to lose their soul and it goes to hell. Anyway, there was an episode about a girl who whose dog got like purposefully put down by this vet that just liked to kill animals.
Yeah.
And they went kind of heavy and hard in that one, and it was a little hard for me to get through. Again, like, you know, it was like, okay, he gets punished in the end, but like, dang, that was a lot. Yeah.
I did like Hellgirl because, like, it makes you think about, like, oh, do you have the right to punish somebody? Because you putting, because it's heavily implied the person you're punishing dies or disappears. Yeah. And it's just like, and they range it from like people who are just being bullied, but who are being bullied in school, to the vet thing, to, oh, my family's being harassed, and things like that. So it varies in degrees of urgency. But are the victims just as bad for stooping to that level? And is there any other better way that they could have had to get out of that other than committing something horrible as well? And kind of just...
Yeah, I did.
It's very interesting.
I agree, I liked it.
But getting through to get to those kind of morals and moral ambiguity, and granted, I never watched the second season of Hellgirl, is interesting, but it might also turn people off, kind of like me in Psychopaths. I've heard that show has great moral ambiguity and discussions about it, but I couldn't get through the first episode.
Were there any pieces of Paranoia Agent that were hard for you to get through? I've just heard things about that show.
Paranoia Agent was hard for me to get to when I was younger because it was just spoopy. That show is like, Satoshi Kon was brilliant. I'm excited to go see Perfect Blue. But I will say that one of the reasons why I've held out on watching Perfect Blue and Paprika is just because I've seen GIFs and images and been told that it's basically like going to see as a modern day like movie example, like going to see like The Black Swan or something.
Oh man, Aronofsky, who really likes Satoshi Kon. That's a great comparison.
Yeah, and I'm like, am I psychologically ready for that? It's not even like I'm turned off. It's just, I don't know if I'm ready.
Yeah. That's legit.
Yeah. Do you have any other pet peeves, hon?
Not off the top of my head. A lot of the stuff that I drop is mainly just because I thought
the premise was not intriguing.
Yeah, it just wasn't enjoyable. Not really like a... Like
or
anything.
Sand.
Or Sand, yeah.
I will never forgive us. By the way, so that reference keeps going back to Children of the Whales, because he couldn't get through the first couple. He's like, I could see why you like this, but there's just so much sand.
I bought you the first volume of the
I'm
manga.
getting there. And then one day, he surprised me by coming home and giving me the first volume of the manga, and I was like, is this repentance? Is this like you trying to suck up to me because you wouldn't watch the whole show? And he's like, yeah, kinda. And I was like, that's fair.
She was so disappointed that I like couldn't watch the rest of the show with her. She was like, I thought you would like this so much since you like RPGs and stuff. And I was like, oh, I forgot to tell you, I don't particularly care for fantasy and anime.
Which will be interesting because he's on the Ancient Magus Bride review. But,
oh man.
we watched the first 3 OVAs of that, by the way.
I like those OVAs.
They were really good. And I was like, did you like it? And he's like, yeah. And I was like, even though it's fantasy? And he's like, well, it has like a modern like setting, and the fantasy takes place in that modern setting, and that makes it a little less grating on me. And I'm like, okay, cool. Then we'll be okay.
However it works.
Then we'll be okay, because most of it takes place in relatively modern settings. As far as I got, anyway.
So interesting. Speaking of as far as we got, guess what? We got past our 30-minute topic mark that we have every episode.
Oh, yeah. This means we can move on to the meat and potatoes.
Yeah, this is gonna, good hearty food of a review here.
Akari prepared it for us.
Oh my gosh. And so the anime that we are going to be reviewing today is Sangatsu no Lion, or March Comes In Like a Lion, the second season. All right, so to give some stats for this show, it is animated by Studio Shaft. You would recognize them for their work on Nisekoi and Maria Holic. The synopsis goes as such. Now, in his second year of high school, Rei Kiriyama continues pushing through his struggles in the professional shogi world as well as his personal life. Surrounded by vibrant personalities at the shogi hall, his school club, and the local community, his solitary shell slowly begins to crack. Among them are the three Kawamoto sisters, Akari, Hinata, and Momo, who have forged an affectionate and familial bond with Rei. Through these ties, he realizes that everyone is burdened by their own emotional hardships and begins to learn how to rely on others while supporting them in return. Nonetheless, the life of a professional is not easy. Between tournaments, championships, and title matches, the pressure mounts as Rei advances through the ranks and encounters incredibly skilled opponents. As he manages his relationships with those who have grown close to him, the shogi player continues to search for the reason he plays the game that defines his career. How did I not flub that? Woo!
I'm so proud of you. That was also a really decent story synopsis.
I was going to say, where'd you pull that from?
My anime list.
They're on their game. They're on their up game. I like it. I am happy about that. So I guess just to give a little bit of a backdrop, the first season of this show we reviewed way back when it came out, which I think it ended in like winter 2016 or something.
Yep.
And it was Cassie, Craig, and I. And Cassie and I love this show. So that gives you the background on where we are coming from in season 2. And Cassie, do you want to talk a little bit about your rewatch experience maybe with it?
Oh yeah, totally. And I could also lead into Dominic talking about his basic feelings about season 1. So we went into the show and we were hot off the heels of watching Your Lie in April, so I was worried, because that was one of the few times where I was also heartbroken because he was not a huge fan of Your Lie in April, which again, Your Lie in April on a second watch, I actually had a few problems with as well, that I didn't see before I talked to him about it, so that's fair. But I was like, oh no, March Comes In Like a Lion also has its moments of melodrama, which was his biggest problem with Your Lie in April. But also, like, going through the first season again, like, what a lot of people would classify as melodrama didn't really seem all that melodramatic. And I think that's one of the biggest strengths of the first season and the second season is nothing seems too overly dramatic because this is these people's lives.
Yeah.
And they're dealing with a lot of really intense things by themselves and with each other. And a lot of the stuff that people are having trouble with starts to come into the light very slowly as they get to know each other as people. And that seems very real and cool to me. Especially with some spotlight moments with especially Hina, but also Akari in the second season. So, how'd you feel about the first season? How do you go?
I like she said, initially I was kind of like, oh, I don't know about this show. Because I don't actually watch a lot of like drama or more
slice of life?
Yeah, kind of shows anymore. I used to. That used to be my bread and butter. And then like I grew I kind of stepped away from that and started watching glorified toy commercials. But so going into it, I was like, I don't know what to expect. We say that I didn't like Your Lie in April, but I mean, I did enjoy watching that with Cassie.
Woo!
It's just, yeah, at some points I was just like, oh, this show is a little bit, melodramatic for me at times. And then at other times it wasn't. So going into the first season, I kind of expected something very similar to that, but was pleasantly surprised in that while the show has like its dramatic elements and there's lots of like really sort of deep personal things going on with these characters, like a lot of it is very like it's very personal but also very like relatable in that, like, it's, like Cassie said, these characters are all just kind of going through their lives and stuff, and I think that most people can relate or come to an understanding with a lot of the characters in this show.
Mm-hmm.
Or at least I can, as someone who, has, like, a history with, anxiety and depression and stuff. I think for people who are a bit more understanding of that sort of thing, like, the characters and the scenarios which are presented in this show will, ring fairly close to the heart. So that's why to me, it's sort of, like, I was very pleased with it.
Nice. Yeah, I've said it before, but my favorite thing about the author of the March Comes In Like a Lion manga and Honey and Clover, Chika Umino, I just think that she absolutely nails making, like, very human characters and just kind of addressing, like, the subtle relatability that people can share. Just, like, way better, or not necessarily better, but in a way that's just very resonant to me that I don't find in a lot of anime. So that is something I agree with you, where I think that in this show, people, you can find somebody to relate to, if not everybody, and even those that maybe you don't relate to, you can find an understanding of, because they're fleshed out.
Yeah.
But I mean, we could also, before we dive fully into characters, I guess just address the story. And, like, I've kind of just been thinking a little bit, chewing on how I think that story has been adapted in this season as compared to season 1. And maybe this is just me, and you guys can reflect on your impressions on season 1, but I felt like there was kind of a distinct split in some arcs in season 1. And I'm talking mainly when the shift of focus for a long time went from Rei to Shimada.
Yeah.
And to me, it felt a lot more separate, where I think that this season we followed a lot of little lines of stories and, like, a lot of people, but they intersected and they gelled a little well, and it felt like the overall story flowed a bit more naturally for me, instead of being like, oh, okay, now there's this big shift. But what did you guys think?
I think that you can talk on that one, because you literally said this, like, a couple days ago. Like, you literally made this point.
Ooh.
Go for it.
So, I think one of my favorite things about season 2 is there's kind of, like, this unified, like, idea of all these people trying to find what it is that, like, moves them forward, or what drives them and stuff. And that includes Rei, that includes Hina, that includes like, Shimada, the old shogi player Yanagi.
Oh yeah,
God, those episodes were fucking hot.
That final episode with him was amazing. We watched that in the train and we're, like, blown away. But I think, like, one thing that, like, kind of really gets to me about this season is that, the first season it was, like, primarily, like, Rei's development, and then, like you said, you had this shift to Shimada. And then, like, at the very end, Rei kind of took what he saw through Shimada and applied it to himself.
Yeah.
And then, so with this season, I think, like, there's all these different characters kind of coming in and coming out, and, like, their arcs kind of intertwining and stuff. But they all kind of, like, conform to sort of back up this sort of, like, idea about, finding what it is that moves you or motivates you or pushes you along in whatever it is that you're doing. And so I think that's, like, one of the most impressive and like, potent things about the second season for me.
I think another great thing, too, bouncing off that, is basically, yeah, like, the first season was very about Rei and him learning to be introspective. And then the second season is, like, taking what he learned about being introspective and learning how to be introspective about other people and their problems.
Oh, yeah.
Specifically those.
Oh, yeah.
So I feel like I agree with you, but I feel also like you needed to have that introspective moment or his sudden... Because Rei, even in the first season, the Kawamoto sisters, are shown to be dealing with things that are very similar to Rei, whether it be the loss of a family member or their own depression. They just handle it in a completely different way and in a completely different kind of setting. So they're kind of like a foil to how they deal with their problems. But it's almost at a surface level that he views the Kawamoto sisters, and I feel like you get a lot more about how he can help them. And there's this big theme of nobody's going to be able to help you if you can't help them too. Or for you to be able to help people, you need to accept other people's help, which he has to come to terms with. And then he's able to give that back. And I think that that's also something Rei needed to learn, and we can probably get into this because I'm pretty sure there'll be a spoiler section. But there's this big theme in the second season about realizing the little things that you do for people, whether you realize it or not, which is really neat. There's so many themes in the story that they like, and that's the thing, like I don't feel like there's an underlining like story.
Yeah. Which
is weird because I feel like this is one of the better stories I've seen. Like, there's no through line for March Comes In Like a Lion, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. It's all about them growing as people, and therefore the story grows with them.
Yeah. I think that's a beautiful way to say it. It's just that as they grow, the story will grow. I think that's completely true. I mean, it's entirely a character-driven piece, and a beautiful character-driven piece at that.
Yeah, it's not like, oh, this is an action sports show about the guy who became the best shogi player of all time.
Yeah, someone actually, when we finished the first season, I posted about it and how much I liked it, and someone on Twitter was like, oh, is this, finally a good, anime about a board game? And I was like, oh, I mean, it's good. If you're here for the board game, though, I don't know if this is the show for you. Just because while the board game is there as, the centerpiece of what the characters are involved in and what they're, focused on, the actual board game itself and what they're playing and, how they're playing it and stuff is not focus. That's not the central focus. And a lot of the matches will end without you even seeing all the moves that were made, especially because shogi is such a long played out game that to have that as the central focus and to focus on mainly on the game and each move that's being played and all the things that they're doing would completely detract from everything else. So yeah, I don't think it's that's not what the show is about. It's about the characters that play the board game rather than the board game itself.
Yeah,
it's more of a cathartic experience when they play.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, and it's a motif for their for wherever they're coming from, mentally, their emotional place. Is there anything? Well, yeah. Do you guys want to proceed into characters, or is there anything else that bounces to your mind about story in particular?
Not that I can think of right now, no.
If I come up with something, I'll probably mention it, but it's one of those shows that, like we've already said, that it's just such a character piece that you just take these themes that are, running throughout the story, and that's one of the reasons why that makes it intriguing, because you don't know where it's going to go, because there's no actual, real specific end goal. So, I think that that's one of the things that benefits the story, where often that would detract from something else, for other stories. A lot of stories I've read, if they meander or I feel like we don't have a place we're going, I'll get annoyed. Whereas with March Comes In Like a Lion, I feel like that's not the point they're trying to make, so I don't have to care. I do, but I don't have to. I care more about how those themes are being represented in the story than necessarily the story itself.
Yeah. Well said. Probably because, it will be probably the meatier part of the general review. We can totally jump into characters. And I'm just looking in the Discord call, and Dom has our lead character, Rei, as his icon. So Dom, if you're comfortable with it, do you want to address maybe a couple reasons why you really appreciate Rei's character?
I relate to Rei on an almost...
uncomfortable level?
Almost uncomfortable level, especially from the first season, where he's just alone in his apartment, eating cup noodles, or there's these parts where he's just in his bed and he can't force himself to get up, and stuff like that. Like,
Mm-hmm.
for a long time, especially when I first moved out of my parents' place, like, that was basically, like, my life. I mean, I wasn't a professional shogi player.
Really?
But,
you sure?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. But, like, the way it portrayed him and his interactions with the other characters, like, especially how he interacts with, like, Akari and stuff, and also his like strained relationship with his
Adoptive father?
Yeah, his adopted father and
Adopted
that
sister.
that whole family.
Oof.
Like, it's not like I can't be like, this is actually me, I've lived these, but it like, there's a similarity with, you know, relationships that I have and stuff, and a lot of this just sort of resonated really heavily with me. So that's a big reason I really, really like Ray.
Nice.
Yeah. I mean, I was gonna do Akari because she is Wife City, but Cassie took it, so.
Okay, so listen, I love Ray too, a whole lot, and he is one of my favorite. I think I put him as my favorite character when I did this little stupid meme on Twitter, because he's such a good vehicle of displaying exactly how awkward and deep depression roots itself.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the things, I guess this is also a story element I like, is that depression isn't something that goes away, you clap your hands and boom, everything's solved. He has these warm moments and feelings when he finds some, what's the word for it? Solace, I guess, with the Kawamoto sisters in season 1. But that doesn't fix him. And he continuously grows to accept more and more warmth around him to deal with the harder things that are going on in his own mind. And I think that's what makes him... we get so much more of how he is handling his personal issues than anybody else in the cast. We still get them.
Yeah.
But, like, he is our character that we see the most. And his inner monologues are fucking poignant.
Yeah.
They're so good.
They're so good.
Sometimes things he said would just make me want to fucking cry. So I also...
moments. Yeah. Won't go into details till
Oh,
spoiler
no.
room, but very, very... Oh, yeah, no, I was talking mostly about me. Because I tend to do that. I tend to go on the scene anecdotes and then forget that we're not in the spoiler room.
Oh, girl, I get you.
But just, yeah, lots of shining moments, I think, this season for Ray. Lots of very poignant moments. And I really appreciate what you said about where he would find the solace and warmth, even back in season 1, where he was just in, like, the darkest trenches that we've seen him in. He was, he could be surrounded by the warmth and then would go back to it. I also liked near the end of the first season, it's more that he is, like, realizing, I could just sit and be comfortable with this, but I need to try my hardest and I need to move forward. Mm-hmm. And I love how that carries over into this season, but then also even goes a step towards, like, how can I do this and try hard for people that I care about? Like, just beautiful development. And I really appreciated that.
Yeah. I think one of my favorite episodes in the entire series is still episode 10 from season 1. I won't go too much into it, but it's after he competes in a shogi match and tries to help somebody that doesn't want his help, giving, like, a bag back for, like, a birthday or Christmas present or something. And, like, every ounce of what he's been trying to do as a person and how he feels bad about just trying to live his life and how complicated things are, basically ends up making him just run away and fall down and screaming his lungs out about how mad he is at everything that's going on. But you don't really get that with him, typically. He'll typically monologue or try and manage his feelings, but he still has his moments, and I think that makes him really human as a character. I loved him. I love Ray. Please protect him. Protect his rarely seen smile. Plus.
You also love Akari, right?
Yeah, I love Akari.
You guys should go in depth on Wife City so people know, because I think it's a great tagline and association.
I just remember we were watching season 1, and immediately when she came on screen, Dominic just started screaming, "Wife City!"
I mean...
And then like, he kept going on Twitter. He's like, "Wife City, the sequel." And things like that.
I just kept making posts about how she was Wife City.
But I think that what makes her so wife city is, one, that she's gorgeous, and all the character designs in this are really great. And we'll get to that later with production. But also, she is just an incredibly complex character, but you don't really get to see how complex she is until you see the little tender moments she has with other people. Particularly in season 1 with Ray, when he is left by peers after trying to get him drunk or whatever, without going into too many spoilers about, but basically him and Akari's meeting. And how there's this little moment Hina has where she's like, oh yeah, Akari just likes bringing home strays. And I think that there's a lot to say about how she manages her own feelings by becoming kind of like a mother figure to other people. But I think you realize in season 2 that she is so anxious about that all the time.
Oh my gosh.
Which is ironic, because you think it's just part of her character, but it's something that she has to work very hard to keep herself together because she's in charge of this family. When I first saw the show, I thought she was their mom. But she has to deal with a lot, and she's a good example of like a strong female character, which is great.
Oh my gosh.
Because you see a few cracks in that pretty little mask she wears most of the time. About being the perfect older sister, being the perfect mother figure, and how she struggles with it. What about you, honey? Why do you like Akari so much?
I mean, she's wife city, but, yeah, I think, like Cassie said, she has this strong, just very, like, she's able to take care of all of these, all of her siblings and, Ray, and work this job and help out at her grandfather's shop and stuff. And I think there's this, like, she's a very domestic kind of woman, but at the same time, she's just very, like, strong and there for everyone. And I think that, like, it shows this kind of, like, female character who can be in that sort of very sort of traditional kind of role, but also be very, like, just strong and, someone to kind of look up to, which is, I think, something that you don't see a lot lately. I think when people think of, like, a strong female character, they don't think of someone who's, like, cooking and cleaning and caring for,
an infant.
Yeah, an infant.
Or a toddler.
A toddler and, a middle schooler, and then taking in, like, this boy, basically, and helping him out whenever possible. But there's a scene in season 2 that basically, like, just solidified, like, my respect for Akari, basically. But I won't go into like too much detail, but just basically before she when she, like, resolves herself to help Hina towards the second half of the season.
We can talk about it in the spoiler room.
Yeah.
That'll be fun. Speaking of Hina.
I love Hina so much. I read the manga a long time ago, and I stopped right around, like, the bullying arc, but when I was coming into season 2, I was just like, ooh, I think they're going to touch on this. I'm really excited because I know that this is where Hina gets a bit more time to develop and shine than she got in the first season, where you're introduced to her character. You see little bits and pieces of, like, how she is developing, like, what she wants to do in her future, like, the people and surroundings that she cares about. But in this season, she really takes the helm of... It's interesting because she's always been kind of portrayed as, like, the naive, like, sweet, childlike one. And you get glimpses in season 1 of, like, basically a lot of like, pain that she shoulders. And she tries her hardest to, like, to keep like a lid on, but sometimes she just can't. And even when she feels like she has to process it, she has to, like, go on her own. And this is a situation where she is faced with a problem that is just way too big and insurmountable, and she still is trying so hard just to keep fighting and keep going. Like, she doesn't even know what she feels she has to do, but she has to do something. She just... I don't know. I love her to death. And I tend to have a bias towards, like, the kind of younger more like naive and innocent characters that Chika Umino does. Also, though, because I like that you see a lot of depth behind them, and this season is really where Hina got that like bright shining moment, and I found a lot of just like her struggles very relatable, moments where she kind of had emotional release. I had emotional release. One scene broke me that I will talk about in spoilers. But her development over the season, I just think was done absolutely beautifully, and it was definitely a highlight. And it was also just seeing the way that her development also impacted the development of other characters was just also great. I love her.
Yeah.
Let me think. I was excited that, again, without going into too many spoilers, I'm glad we also got at least a little more about Soya.
Oh, yes.
Than we did in the first season.
Yeah.
That was really good.
Yeah. You can't talk too much about Soya without talking about spoilers, because he only really got like a couple of episodes. But you do get to see what makes him tick and why he acts the way he is. And the way I viewed Soya in the first season is completely different than how I viewed him by the end. Because a lot of his mannerisms that you may have thought one way are completely relevant to stuff he's going through, even though we only get a little bit of a taste of it. It's very interesting. Soya is just a very interesting, pretty character. No matter how ghost-like
very pretty. Yeah, I like that. I like how in the first season he's more of just like some kind of pedestal, like that is off in the distance, basically. That especially Rei just views as like this kind of almost like fabled character, and then you start to get a little bit in season 2, and he seems more real. He seems closer, and that is something that I really appreciated.
Speaking of side characters, shout out to Rei's homeroom teacher, or not anymore homeroom teacher, but God, he's like one of the best characters in the show.
He's super good.
Oh, Hayashida kills me. I love him.
There's a scene in season 1 that still makes me want to fucking cry. And it's just like this very simple scene that he has with Rei. But I'm just like, man. It's good. He's so good.
He's damn good. He's goals, honestly. He is moral goals, basically. He's just such a good guy.
He's moral goals. He's also teacher goals.
Basically.
I'm like, that's the exemplary teacher. Like, dang.
I wish that I had a teacher like him when I was in high school.
Same.
Like, just because I feel like I didn't trust adults very much when I was younger. And to an extent, I still don't. In many cases. But if I had somebody who, because he knows Rei better than probably almost anyone in the cast. I'd argue even, like, he gets to have some more intimate conversations than he even has with the Kawamoto sisters. And yet he's not always there. It's very interesting. Sometimes you need that outside third-party source to be able to talk to about stuff.
Yeah. Oh, man. Also, just quick side character shout-outs to our boy Nikaido, because he's good.
Oh, Nikaido!
Nikaido.
Oh, I was talking to Dominic about it, and I was like, I never thought I would cry over this character.
Yeah, we both got pretty messed up in the second season with his arc.
His like little mini arc?
Yeah, we were like, because before that there's like a bunch of Hina episodes.
Yeah.
And then it focuses on Nikaido, and like after the Hina episodes we're already like on our side, like don't kick us anymore, Sangatsu. And then you get the Nikaido arc and it's like, oh, it hurts so good.
Yeah, it's like, oh, I guess I'm done, kicking you in the side. I'll kick you in the face a little now.
Yeah.
We'll shift focus, but it'll still hurt.
Yeah, that was when they were really leaning into the, like, this is a big gaping wound that we are, like, showing you right now, and you're not getting out anytime soon. You thought that character redirection would fix it? You're still here.
Yeah.
It's just awful.
Oh, especially because in, like, season 1, especially from his first introduction, I thought I was going to be really annoyed by Nikaido's character.
Yeah, same here.
I was like, oh no, it's one of these. But then, like, even in the first season, they did a really good job of, like, giving him character motivation for why he wanted to be around Rei so much. Because I'm not gonna lie, when I first started March Comes In Like a Lion, I was like, oh my god, this is gonna have all the tropes in it. We're gonna have the rival character who's gonna try and sabotage him halfway through the fucking show. Oh boy. And then it just turns out that Nikaido is like one of Rei's biggest supporters, at least in the shogi world. And he gets him in a lot of ways that are very subtle. It's weird. There's a line that he shouted in season 1 that came back in season 2, and it was so emotionally impacting, and I was like, fuck you, shut up. One more thing I also wanted to mention is something that Sangatsu does very well, and this can, like, relate to character and story, is making you care about characters and their stories that you never thought you would give a shit about. For example, there is a character that Nikaido has a match with, relatively later on in season 2, and I thought he was just gonna be that character that, he had a match with Nikaido, and, you know, some stuff happened, but then they had, like, half an episode dedicated to him, and I was like, oh man, I don't want to really learn about this guy, and then by the end, I was like, the bird! Without going too much into spoilers, and then the gentleman, what was his name, the older guy?
Yanagi?
I didn't think I'd give a crap about that guy.
Like, they introduced him, and I was just like, oh, this is just some loud old fart. I don't really care about this guy.
Yeah, he's here for, like, comic relief.
Yeah.
And to be kind of just pouty.
And then by the end of his arc, you're just like, oh man.
This hurts.
That was powerful. That was some real stuff.
And metaphors.
Something...
Visual fuck.
Oh, they were beautiful. The art just went ham. Like,
every time he put down a piece, it was just like, holy crap.
Burning fields, water metaphors. The burning fields
Speaking of all of that, there is production.
I love Shaft.
Which
I love Shaft.
Am I the only one that feels like they definitely amped it up this season? Like, season 1's already beautiful, but like,
oh no,
they went ham in this season.
Did, yeah.
What?
You can.
The first opening alone is just like,
yeah.
Every shot of that opening is just masterfully done. Like, it's amazing.
Yeah, they put a lot of effort into it. It's like, I think that, like, the first season, while as beautiful as and well told as the story was and everything else, because I think we gave that show, like, a bunch of love-its or something. Like, we were in love with the first season. But I feel like it got popular and they were like, oh man, people want more of this. Here's a couple more gajillion yen, have fun, or something. Or people just took it on themselves to make it the most biggest passion project ever, because... I know, actually, I'm intrigued to see what you think, Cami, because I know when the first season came out and you saw that Shaft was doing it, you were a little like, aw, man. And I remember we had a conversation because you were like, Cassie, I know you like Shaft, but God, do I have such a weird relationship with them and their camera angles and their colors, and I don't know how I feel about Shaft having my baby over here, taking care of it. I don't know if I could trust this babysitter. I don't know if it knows how to change diapers. I don't know if it knows how to handle such beautiful and subtle character expressions and utilization of colors. I don't know. And now I'm like, the second season, I'm like, Cami, how do you feel? Because this is fucking beautiful. I love it.
Yeah, I'm a pretentious piece of shit, like, for Chika Umino. So basically, when the first season came out, of course, I was like, it's not the same studio that was doing Honey and Clover. Oh, no. But, like, no, Shaft does a brilliant, brilliant job. And the main thing that honestly deterred me a bit in season 1 is just that I felt like they were pushing forward too much of their Shaftism. So, like, putting in a lot of head tilts, a lot of the, like, weird... Yeah, and it, you know, to me, just, like, from reading the manga and stuff, I was like, I know this is literally just Shaft being Shaft, and for that reason, it just bugged me a little bit, because it was just very intentional. But I feel like they laid back a little bit with the head tilts in this season.
They did.
And instead of kind of relying so much more on, like, the things that they do, like the head tilts, the stained glass, they honestly, I feel like they went a lot more with, like, varied experimental art styles in a lot of parts. Like, there were just a lot of stylistic differences. Do you guys remember a scene where Hinata is feeling angry and she has this internal, like, monologue of a situation, and it's, like, wildly dark, like, orange and purples and reds, and then there's, like, and scratchy and, like, white splatters, and oh my god, I was just like, whoa, this is so cool, because they would do, like, wildly drastic art changes this season, but it always fit whatever was going on contextually. And that was something that I honestly really appreciated and was very just interested in seeing throughout this season, that they kind of did a lot more like wild art stuff.
Yeah, there was a shout out to one episode where you get like kind of a breakdown of a teacher. I'm not going to say which teacher.
Oh my gosh.
And Dominic looked at me and I looked at him and he's like, this is fucking haunting. Like, it's really freaking creepy.
Yeah.
And that was a huge art shift. And I remember one of the things I immediately had to go get a GIF of just so I could look at it again was there's a scene where Ray internally is feeling like a bunch of turmoil. And it shows him breaking down internally.
Yeah.
And that was insanely like sketchy, but also very detailed. It was weird.
That was heavy.
beautiful.
Yeah, I was like uncomfortable, but like in the way they wanted me to be uncomfortable. I was just like, whew. Yeah, it really just laid into the emotions that were going on. And even on the offside, like during the lighter moments and those moments, there were a lot of like watercolors and pastels, and I really loved those as well for just accentuating like how people were feeling, and even for a sense of contrast from like season 1. That was really nice.
A lot of the backgrounds were really sketchy too. Especially like nighttime skies. Like looked like almost like you were like looking at a picture book or something.
Yeah, it does that a lot.
Yeah. Which was, I liked that though. I also really liked how a lot of the scenes were shot.
Yeah.
Like if a character was feeling distant or alone, they would often show that character in the distance. Alone. Or if somebody was feeling internal strife, like we mentioned earlier, they'd like show things that showed that they were very upset or unstable.
Unstable and experimental, absolutely.
The bandages or the scarves that one of the characters, the older gentleman, carries during one of the shogi matches to show just the weight he carries. That was visually stunning. The burning field metaphor.
Okay, Cassie, I just have to ask you, during his arc of those episodes, especially near the end, were you getting Rakugo vibes? Because I was getting Rakugo vibes.
Yeah, I was getting a lot of them.
Oh my god.
There's a lot of things that I feel like, I love Rakugo Shinju so fucking much. I think the show is like a fucking masterpiece. But I feel like March Comes in Like a Lion is one of those ones that I could keep coming back to over and over again. I think that makes it like a little bit more accessible than Rakugo. But at the same time, there's some moments where I'm just like, both of these are, you put them side by side, I think that they were just written by the same person because they're just so masterly spellbound. But like how the scene is choreographed and also just the dialogue and things people are saying. It's crazy. Do you have anything else?
Another thing that I noticed, sorry.
Oh no, I was just poking Dominic because I noticed he's been very quiet.
Yeah, I don't pay super, like, lately, when it comes to anime, I haven't been paying, like, super in-depth, like, detail to the production. So
That's okay.
I think a lot of my, like, anything I might say about it isn't quite as nuanced as I would like.
I disagree. I think you should.
But
feel free to express your opinion.
Yeah, nuanced or whatever.
I think the show, like we said, like there are these little shaft things that are always going on. Like the head tilts and stuff. And at first, I was like, oh, here we go. Good old Shaft. Doing their little head tilts.
And their colors.
Yeah.
Their color splatches.
And at first, I was a little weirded out by it, and it felt kind of unnatural, but for some reason, as I kept watching, I just kind of, like, accepted it and got used to it. And it worked. It worked within the frame of the scenes that it would come in, you know, like, if characters were talking and they would have, like, a head tilt or something. Like, yeah, that's just Shaft being Shaft, but it didn't feel, like, completely pointless. Or, you know, out of place within the actual, like, frame of the scene and stuff like that. Another thing that I also really like about this show is a lot of the visual metaphors. We've, like, briefly touched on a lot, like, Cassie has briefly touched a lot upon a lot of the stuff with Yanagi in his, like, internal monologues and stuff. and thought process. Like a lot of the little visual metaphors that basically personify what he's going through. But I also really like a lot of the stuff that they do, particularly with Rei. Lots of water.
Yeah.
Lots and lots of water. But they use it in a lot of really like varying ways. This is from the first season, but this one always really sticks out to me is when he's first playing with Shimada, and he's getting like completely like swept away by
like waves.
Yeah, by the waves and how the flow of the match is going, and like the art direction kind of changes to this sort of like black and white like aesthetic, but the water is like blue, like these different shades of blue, and the way it like works together, it almost looks like, it's hard to describe, but it almost looks like an old like kind of painting in a way, but very like crisp, and the characters still look like very like defined and everything, and the way the animation moves is just super smooth. But the way they just did that like really impressed me. And there's lots of little things like that sprinkled throughout both seasons, particularly when during like very intense moments, like with matches and stuff like that I really like a lot.
In the second season, I really like how it shifted from being just water to an actual physical metaphor of a storm. Including in the story a storm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Including. But yeah, like that was, and that actually, when things would clear up, the storm would clear. Like, you would learn things. It was just very interesting. How do you feel about that, Kim?
Yeah. I had a point that, yeah, the metaphors are gorgeous and they're wonderful, and I think they just honestly did the same like brilliant job that they did. It was just interesting, like you guys mentioned, seeing then associated metaphors come up for other characters, like with burning and grass and things with I'm forgetting his name again. Yanagi. And then with Hina later, you get a lot of like bouncing sweets, and I really love that too. I thought that was so cute. Another thing that I realized though, or got a sense of, especially this season, and I think I've heard somewhere, don't quote me on it, that Chika Umino just likes to make old men moe. and I swear, there was a lot of that in this season, especially in that arc, and there were brief glimpses of it, like even in Honey and Clover, there's old men that would always smile and blush about like young men and youth and whatever, and you could get some of that carried over with like how the rest of the shogi society like viewed Rei and Nikaido and everybody, but that just kind of overall goes in again as to like great character expressions, and it can vary between any sort of emotion, like the happy, sillier stuff, and then the really somber moments. Like, it's all just very resonant.
Yeah. Character designs are really nice, too. Yeah. I like the eyes. I love the eyes.
Mm-hmm.
What were you going to say?
They're beautiful.
Like, she brought up the expressions and stuff. Another thing I really like about this show is there's such a varied amount of character expression. Like, there's very rarely will you'll see, like, two faces or expressions that ever like really seem the same, as before. And one thing I particularly like about this show is the way it's able to use the characters and their expressions in a way that's refreshing and funny, but also very like relatable.
Yeah.
So it never feels like something like is just like, oh, haha, that's a funny face. Like, I really, but that's just it. It's like, that's a funny face, but it also feels very, like something that you can actually relate to. Like, oh, that's a big mood. I get that.
Oh my gosh.
That sort of thing. And I feel like the show is consistently doing that. Not just only within, like, the more sillier moments, but also within the heavier moments. It's, like, the story itself is the story and the characters themselves are very relatable. But the visual aspect of that helps to flesh that out, like, completely.
Voice.
Ugly crying.
Ugly crying was so good.
Yeah.
Oh my god. Oh.
I never thought I'd see an angry face on Hina. That was kind of clashy for me. Like, in the best way. Yeah. But yeah. Also, voice direction in this show. So I've never actually listened to the English dub. There is one. Haven't listened to it. Can't comment on it. I don't know if any of us have. But the voice direction, like, it's an all-star cast. Like, I think we were, like, going and looking at the, like, all the voice actors and the Seiyu in the show. And it's like, oh, God, they were so good.
Mm-hmm. I agree completely. And Cassie, I know that this is something that you always appreciate in anime, and so now I feel like I've gotten more attuned to it, but like the use of silence or like selective sounds is again very resonant in this season, especially in some really heavy emotional moments, the way that they'll just kind of like pause and hold and like prepare you for something that's about to happen. It was very nicely executed.
Yeah, I think I mentioned that in the first season review, that like some of the biggest like moments from the first season were when it was completely silent, like when Ray first found Hina crying in the first season, and it was completely silent before it cut to her actually sobbing, and I was like, Jesus Christ. They did that a lot in this season too. It was pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
Also, especially with like, I was especially impressed with Akari, because she's just been so soft, and there are these moments where she would get upset in the first season, but it would be also in a soft way, like a solemn way. But this season you got to see her actively being anxious more than like once or twice, and with very intense moments. Same could be said for Hina. But both of them, I just was very impressed by their vocal performances, especially expressing things that we haven't seen before.
Mm-hmm.
Or at least not much
a lot more range.
Yeah. Because, I mean, like, we obviously have heard Hina be emotional in the first season, relatively early on. Mm-hmm. But that extends into the second season in a lot of different ways. Like, not just being upset and depressed, but angry. And same with Akari. And, like, I know there's a moment where Akari gets confused when another character is just like, okay, where's the proof of this thing? And we'll probably talk about that in spoilers too. There's a lot to talk about. But just her panic is really well done.
Yeah. Yeah.
Got anything to say about voice direction?
I agree completely.
Just it was good. Lots of really recognizable, even with the side characters. Lots of really recognizable and incredibly talented voice actors. But yeah, you both basically. I think the only thing, if we're talking about sound, that I don't have like a particularly like strong opinion on is I don't remember any like music.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, I don't. There's nothing like music wise. Like we talked about the effectiveness of like the silence and stuff, but as far as like actual like composition, there's nothing that particularly stands out to me or stood out to me enough to actually remember right now. But
the OPs and the EDs aside, I guess.
Yeah, aside from the actual like opening and ending music, a lot of which is really, really good. But yeah, aside from that, nothing particularly stood out to me.
Yeah, I think I'd agree as far as soundtrack goes.
Yeah. But then again, it's almost like I can't really even be that upset with it.
Yeah, it's not something that I like, oh, this takes away. It's just...
Oh, yeah, totally. Yeah.
Openings and endings, though, like I loved all of them.
I went and spent money on that second ED.
Oh, God, it's so good.
She was in love with it.
Yeah, I went and, like, bought it. I spent that $1.29 on iTunes.
You do that. We need to support these awesome artists and their beautiful songs. Yeah, every time that play, I think there was even, Get had been he'd been like doing other stuff in passing while I was like watching the show. And one time I had him sitting down and I just paused right before the ending and I was like, have you heard this ending yet? And he was like, well, I mean, I've heard bits and pieces of it. And I was like, but can you just like listen to the whole thing? And then he's like, yeah, okay, I'll listen to the whole thing. And then I was like, isn't it just amazing? And he's like, yeah, it's good. And I was like, but it's like amazing, right? It's just like, he's like, yes, yeah, it's good. Good job.
I know that Dominic got very excited when the second opening was done by Unison Square Garden.
Yeah, they're pretty good. I like them a lot.
Yeah. All of the OPs and EDs I really liked. And the production in those were, like, movie budget worthy. It was insane.
And again, also had a flex of, like, interesting art styles. Like, the EDs always were a bit more experimental, too, which I liked.
Dominic pointed out in the second opening that he really liked how the credits were shown. And until he pointed out, I didn't notice it, but the credits in the second opening are done in a really cool, unique way.
Yeah, instead of having, like, just, like, plain white text over, popping up intermittently, they actually, like, they're, like, the way they sprawl it around over the screen is, like, really unique. Like, it's not something I've ever seen in, like, an anime opening, which is really weird because it actually looks, like, incredibly nice. But that they, like, sprawl it around different corners or areas of the screen, rather large, and with this sort of, like, colored text that sort of fits within what's actually being displayed in the opening. And while I don't think the second opening is as impressive animation-wise, I just think the soft use of that text to display the credits really works super well in the second opening's favor. I like that a lot.
I have to go back and rewatch. Now I really want to see that.
Yeah, it's just this nice stylistic choice that I liked about it.
Rating, so we can get to spoilers?
Ooh, sure. Why the heck not? Who goes first?
Dominic, he's the guest.
Who goes first?
He's the guest.
There
you go first.
How do we do this again?
Okay, so to have everybody remember exactly how this works, not just our guest, we'll say whether we wanted to burn a show, whether we wanted to skip a show, whether you'd recommend checking the show, whether you liked the show, or whether you loved the show. Those are the ratings. You'll discuss, shortly why you gave it that rating, and then you'll give an alternate anime recommendation.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say I loved this show, both seasons.
Yes. Okay, keep going.
I genuinely enjoyed watching it basically every time we did. Just because, like we've said, the characters and everything are just so relatable, and they just worm your way into your heart very quickly, and in a way that really speaks volumes to how the show is able to convey and express everything that the source material has laid out for them. So yeah, I love it, and I basically encourage anyone who enjoys watching anime to check this show out, at the very least. Even if you're not super into drama or anything like that, I do recommend trying out. The only thing I would warn about is to not think too much about the whole shogi element, because I think at first you kind of think I don't know anything about this weird Japanese chess thing that these guys are playing. And I think it's easy to get lost that since I don't know anything about that, I can't truly enjoy the show. But I don't think that's necessary at all. If I had recommendations, I can think of two, depending on what you're looking for. I think if you actually really want a show that's about people sitting down and playing a board game, I would recommend Akagi, which is about Mahjong. And that's a show where they actually literally go in to these people sitting down playing this game, and each move that they make and all the inner monologues and stuff like that. The only hurdle with that is that if you don't know how Mahjong works, it's also very hard to get into, and that's another really that's another game with a really high barrier of entry for people who haven't grown up or haven't been exposed to it that much. Although the show does do a little bit to kind of try and ease you into it, but people's mileage will vary on that. For something for something that's a little bit actually more in line with what I like about Sangatsu no Lion, I kind of struggled to think of something, but if I had to pick one show, my pick would be Majestic Prince.
That's different.
Yeah.
Oh.
Which is a robot show about fighting aliens, and so people be like, what are you talking about? But I think one of my favorite things about Majestic Prince is not so much like the actual robots or the fighting and stuff, but how it uses really, really effective and charming character writing to sort of sell you on its main cast of characters and their like growth as like a team and as people. And I think that's just one of the things that I particularly enjoy a lot about Sangatsu no Lion. So that is my pick.
Cool.
That's really cool. I gotta check that out now.
Akagi? Or Majestic Prince, or both?
Majestic Prince. Yeah.
You know, I'm not gonna lie, I'm way more intrigued to watch Majestic Prince now. I don't know if you did that on purpose, but...
No, I didn't do it on purpose, but I'm glad you're more into the idea of watching it.
Yeah, that's one of those shows that we're going to watch together eventually. We try and take turns watching anime, but because we have this anime podcast, I pick what we watch most of the time. But Majestic Prince is one of the ones we're planning to watch together, so definitely I'm looking forward to that. I guess it's my turn. I'm going to try and keep this as short and concise as possible because I do want us to have lots of meat and bones to talk to in the spoiler section. So apologies to our editor. This is probably going to be a relatively long episode. Glad we're recording this on a weekend as opposed to our weekday. But
true.
Anyway, I love this show and I can't talk too much more about what I love than what I've already said. I think that it's a beautiful character piece. I think that it explores themes that have been explored in anime before, but with a very refreshing and different lens. And I think that some of the characters in this show are some of the best written ones that I've seen. And even in comparison to things like Rakugo Shinju, which I think is a fucking masterpiece. I believe that March Comes In Like a Lion is probably it's at least in my top 10 favorite anime. Period. And I mostly picked it up just because of how excited Cammy was about it. Like, she was so excited, and I just said, I gotta watch it now. I have no choice. And watching through it, I told Dominic, we gotta read the manga. We gotta read the manga together, because I don't know when we're getting a third season, but I need more. So I think that goes through leaps and bounds of talking about how much I love this show. And I'm just going to leave it at that. There's nothing more that I can say that I haven't said already. It's an amazing show. I think that everybody out there should at least check it out. That's not the rating I'm going to give it, because I'm obsessed and I love it so much. I'm not crying. You're crying. It's fine.
We're all crying. It's all right.
It's okay. And especially just because I got to experience the second season with Dominic, I think that that's going to make it a very special show for me. And especially since I think it's like probably the first anime that we've watched together that I've at least recommended that it seems like he really loved. And I think that gives it a nice other little stamp of approval. Sometimes anime can be made better, even when it's already great, when you watch it with people that you love and cherish. So, and I think that's something the show teaches you a little bit too. Sometimes it's the people more so than the moments, and sometimes the moments more than the people. It's a pretty good show. Please watch it. Whew. That being said, I was going to make the most generic recommendation before by saying the only show I can think of that made me cry this much constantly through 2 seasons was Clannad. But a lot of people know Clannad exists. And if you don't know Clannad exists and you haven't watched it, you have my full recommendation there. But I also wanted to recommend a show that I want to go back to, which is Chihayafuru, which is also much like March Comes In Like a Lion, based around a game, and a very Japanese game at that. I believe is it Karata? Or,
yes,
Karata. Which is extremely important to the plot, but it's much like March Comes In Like a Lion. You don't have to understand what's going on as long as you get the basic premise, because the thought processes of the characters going into it during the games and afterwards and how their relationships build outside of it is very similar and reminiscent to March Comes In Like a Lion. And I think that if you liked this show, you might like that one. Maybe if I ever get a rewatch it, maybe I'll drag you through it too. Who knows? Dominic. Anyway, so yeah, those are my 2 little recommendations. Chihayafuru being the main one.
Awesome. All right, I'm going to keep this short, especially since the landlord's dog is going on a barking spree and I can't do anything to stop it. Woo!
That's okay.
But also, because the two of you, I mean, explained beautifully everything that makes this show as special as it is. I just love the author of it so much, and everything that she is brilliant at, I think, is fully on display here, on top of just having a beautiful production adaptation by Studio Shaft and all of the other staff members involved. I love the heck out of this show. I think that everybody should check it out. It's an extremely personal show, I think. So, I mean, you're going to have your own experience with it, but I think that the opportunity for it to be just like a treasure of an experience is so high that you should just give it a shot anyway. And I highly recommend it. I can't recommend it enough. It's amazing. Sets the bar up really high. Full love it's across the board. And for alternate anime recommendations, because I'm just awful and I love Chika Umino, go watch Honey and Clover, please. I would not have probably sought out March Comes In Like a Lion if I hadn't fell in love with Honey and Clover, and then I was just like clamoring for something that again was just beautifully written characters, a heart-wrenching story, and just real human issues that I could sink my teeth into, which March Comes In Like a Lion fully deserves. I do think, while, you know, you're not gonna like weigh them equally, I think it's pretty high chance that you will at least enjoy one if you enjoyed the other, so definitely give it a shot.
Woo!
And now, we get to the spoiler room.
By the way, before we go into the spoiler room, Craig isn't here.
I always forget to plug fucking...
It's fine. Craig isn't here, so I'm going to do it for him. He's on another podcast. It's called Save Our Progress. They used to talk about video games, now they just talk about whatever the fuck they feel like. It's still really entertaining. Go check them out. Yeah. Now we can move into spoilers. Whee!
Where do we even start, guys?
This is a very minor spoiler and not even really a spoiler, but I forgot to mention it in art direction, so I just wanted to do a shout out to the fact that I am really silly, and I didn't notice in the first season they were doing this, but different artists did, like, illustrations as end cards at the end of each episode. And the Chika Umino one at the end about made me burst into tears, because it's just like, it's the fucking artist of the freaking show. I loved it. And it's the whole cast.
It is so beautiful, and also just, I had a lot of fun. I told Cassie about one of them already, but there are little, like, cameos. Like, there was a cameo of a shop that was owned by the family of one of the main characters in Honey and Clover, and I, like, lost my fucking mind when I got that connection. And then also, there was the Umino clock in season 1, and this season they decided to make it Umino beer cans, and I loved it. That was super cute.
I think that we kind of have to talk about the Hina bullying arc. Especially because it's also so interesting because, like, the show starts out, episode 1 and 2 are very slow, but also just kind of getting you back in. And then they hit you with this Hina thing, like, right at the end of episode 3. And then episode 4 is like, oh, I hope you didn't think we were going to get you prepared to deal with this shit. Like, and that's not a bad thing. I was just like, oh my god. Oh, dear.
Yeah, it does come in very, very heavy, just, like, with no warning.
Yeah, especially because I think episode 3 just ends with Hina standing in the doorway with, like...
comes in.
With, like, just one of her shoes missing. And just looking completely miserable. And then it ends. And I'm like, wait, what? What happened to my baby?
Oh my gosh. Also, just another character that I guess we couldn't really get into, but, like, another character that just gradually showed up and became so powerful. Chiho, like...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my god. Whew.
She was a minor character that did not have many lines, but also just... Weirdly enough, almost like Rei, like, just showed how people need to have that, like, they all have to adjust to their feelings and trauma in different ways.
Yeah, the farm that she went to and, like, the process that she was going through, like, especially when Hina visited and, like, narrated it to us, it was so powerful. And it's like, sad that these things have to be in place, but it's like, wow, what a very powerful glimpse of, like, what people go through.
Yeah, the part where they were sitting together, and it was just like, sometimes she, like, spaces out because being around someone her own age, like, forces her to remember what she went through. I was like, goddamn show. Like,
even when it was Hina, who was somebody who supported her and was kind of like a beacon of like and I also broke when she sent the letter. When she was like,
oh my God.
I'm going through these steps of recovery where, like, one, I had to make friends with animals and then people who are older. And then as soon as I was told about this step about making friends my own age, I just immediately thought about you. And I was like, and she, like, had the courage to ask her to come visit her in the summer. And I was like, I don't know shit about this character very much, but I'm so invested.
Yeah.
I hate you, Chica Umino. But I love you so much.
I'm so glad I'm so glad they followed up on her as well, because, like, any show easily could have just done, like, she got bullied and she moved away, but the follow-up was really powerful.
Yeah.
And I think also spoke true to Hina's earnesty and, like, wanting to, you know, change things and how she felt bad. It wasn't just, like, bullying at the moment, because she genuinely invested herself in Chiho.
How did you feel about the bully?
Ooh.
The girl who got, like, spotlight.
Yeah.
Like,
Ooh,
I
got something to say.
Okay.
Go!
So, I mentioned earlier how I liked how the second season kind of, like, uses all these different characters to kind of show, like, this unified idea of, like, trying to get where you want to be or move forward. And while initially I hated the bully because she was bullying Hina, and I was just like, what a bitch. But when they did that thing with the fill-in teacher, and that last scene where he, like, completely destroys her and, like, like, lays out, like, her entire, like, issue and her, like, basically her problem and her anxieties and stuff and why she is the way she is. It was this, like, it kind of, like, shed light on this interesting, like, foil to that central idea. Like, this is a character who has no motivations or goals or any idea of what it is she's able to do. And so, obviously, she takes it out on other people and causes problems for other people. And I just found it, like, this interesting parallel. You have all these characters who have this thing that they're shooting for. And then you have this girl who is the exact opposite, and that she doesn't have anything like that. And so instead of trying to move forward herself, she brings everyone down with her.
Yeah.
Like, brings them down to her level, or tries to.
Yeah, so while I hate her as a person, she sucks. She is really interesting as a component of that central idea. And so, in the end, it's like I liked her inclusion in that.
How do you feel about her, Cammy?
I don't know. I just had an interesting thought, and I mean, it's not really fair because it goes down to how much exposure they had. But I mean, there are two characters in the show specifically that made me, that, you know, just were very hard to watch, and like the things that they did, I really didn't appreciate. And I was thinking about how that person in season 1 primarily is so much Kyoko.
Yeah.
And then here we have, I don't fuck her name. She doesn't, whatever. But yeah, we
probably
have
figure it out.
Takagi,
that's
Takagi,
it.
yes. Yeah, skilled bully Takagi. Anyway, so it's interesting because, I mean, while I think that I do appreciate, like, absolutely the fact that she is a foil, where Kyoko to me is very complex and captivating, Takagi is like, yeah, this is the shitty teenager that comes along every year, every couple years, that exists and does this. She's part of a really unfortunate, like, pattern that comes in. So I liked, obviously, everything that that she brought to the narrative, but I didn't find her particularly compelling. Everything surrounding her, yes. I even really like the stand-in teacher.
Yeah.
And I like that he was just like, I have to fucking sit down with you and we're gonna do this. Like, I really appreciated that. But her herself, I mean, you know what, though? I'm also glad they didn't give her, like, too much exposure. I don't think she deserved and or needed more than they did.
Like a redemption for her.
No.
I like how it ended with her just being completely blasted and called out for how bad of a person she is.
Oh, especially because the teacher was trying so hard. And then it got to the point where he was trying to relate to her, saying, I've been where you are. I've been that person. And I don't know if it's supposed to insinuate that he himself was a bully, or if he just did some things he regretted. But he's like, all I know is that I wanted to be a better person than I was. And she's like, oh, we're talking about you? How long is this going to take, by the way? And he's like, not very long at all. I'm done with you. Bye. I did my best for you, but this is the things that you're dealing with. You already had your hand holding. Like, good luck with the rest of your life.
Now. Yeah. Which was perfect. The perfect ending for her. Like, that door closed. Bye.
Yeah. But he also did it in the most motivational way possible. It was very interesting. Yep. Speaking of Kyoko, I was very confused because I thought they were going to do something with Goto. And then they didn't do anything?
Yeah, he has that little, like, extra bit, and then it's just like, yeah.
And, like, the thing that I've always wondered about Goto, and I'm gonna have to read the manga, so maybe don't even answer me if you know the answer to this question, Cammy. But I can't tell if what they're trying to show is that Kyoko was the one following him around all along, and he just can't get rid of her. And maybe Rei misunderstood their relationship. And then he was like, well, who are you to judge what's right and wrong? Because he's going through his own scenario with his wife, and he's got this girl who's following him around. Because he also has these moments where he, like, defended Shimada. And Rei is even like, okay, am I supposed to like him or hate him? And I'm like, okay, are they going to make Goto into an interesting character? And then he just drops. And that was one of the things I was really annoyed about. Because I was like, because he was the one I hated the most in the first season. And then in the second season, I'm like, oh, he's going to be a person now? And then it was like, oh, no, I guess we're not going to get to him. Which is fine. Hina was way more important. And so was some of the in Nikaido and other characters. But I just also, I'm like, could you have saved that then?
Yeah.
Yeah.
For another time?
Yeah, that's Goto is one of the main reasons. Like, I'm like, I need season 3. Where is it?
Yeah.
Just because, like, I want to know, like, what's up with him and where his whole thing is going. Because, they have, like, I think with the first season, you kind of have these sprinkled parts of, like, this guy is an asshole. He did some bad things. And that's basically, like, where you're left off. And then season 2, like, has this part early on with the whole Kyoko thing and then the wife. And then after that, it's just, like, the character is never really brought back into focus again. Yeah. And that's disappointing, and I'm not sure if that's just because that's how the manga is laid out. But
or maybe he hasn't been, like, filled out in the manga yet. I'm not sure.
Yeah, that could be saved. I have no clue, honestly.
There could be so much going on. Like, he could have, I mean, the stuff that happened with Kyoko could have been totally true, and he just made a mistake and regrets it. It could be, like, a misunderstanding. It could be so many things. And I want to know what those are. Also, I wanted to ask how you guys felt, because there seems to be, like, this very weird, like, when I was first seeing it, seemed more like a familial thing, but it seems more like Rei is, like, idolizing Hina in a way in the second season. And I kind of get it, but it also, to me, seems like it came a little out of nowhere.
Yeah.
I loved it, though, because and the more I saw of him and how he was, like, you know, I thought about it more. I was like, oh, okay, he was the one who was bullied when he was a child, and just knowing that there are people out there like that who will stand up for a person who's been bullied, like, saved him in a way. But it just went from him not feeling that way about her at all, regardless of what she's already done, to she's my fucking lifesaver. And
I agree with you completely, honestly.
How did you feel?
Yeah. It didn't feel completely unnatural to me. I think there's, like, this kind of, like, turning point for him. Where, like, he kind of realizes, like, oh, there's someone else. There's someone that I can, like, believe in that's different from what I've known before, because I think Rei has gone through so much where, you know, he has, like, these sort of stagnant, like, family situation that he had to escape from. And then, obviously, in school, he was bullied. And so I think when he kind of sees this aspect of Hina that sort of flips that all around, I think that's basically where that comes from. But I do understand where you're coming from with, you know, it's feeling kind of like, whoa, wait, where did this come from?
Yeah, like, it's understandable, but it just seemed really abrupt.
Yeah.
I think for me, a lot of the issue is almost even just, like, the word choice. I feel like, and this is just me, and again, the things that I like, honestly, from, like, chapter 4, when he saw her, like, crying on the bridge, I was really fascinated by their dynamic, and I thought that there was a really nice, like, slow burn to how they were slowly getting closer and, like, learning a lot more about each other. But I think just that scene specifically, and him saying, like, you are my lifesaver, like, that felt very intense all of a sudden. And I was like, whoa, I didn't know we were here. Like, I thought we were, like, slow burn chugging along, but, like you said, Dom, I think I guess it's the culmination and, like, a turning point.
Yeah. And I think also, like, it might just be the word for it. Like, if he had said, like, oh, she's, like, my beacon of hope, or...
Yeah, lifesaver...
Which he said later, and I loved it.
Yeah.
Yeah, lifesaver is a really weird word choice. I don't know if it's... I can't remember.
Yeah.
I wasn't paying too much attention to the actual Japanese word, so I'm not sure if it's just, like, the subs or something.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, lifesaver is a really weird... word choice, in my opinion.
Later, when he did have, like, in the second to last episode, when it montaged and he's like... She's like, she lit a light in, like, a part of me. I cried. And I was like,
that was good. I also really liked the scene where he's like, I'm sorry I didn't do anything for you. And she, like, berates him. Like,
oh my God.
Even though you listened to me all these times and you did all of these things, like, really? Like, fuck you. And then he still thinks it. And you have the scene with the teacher where he's like, I feel like I didn't do anything for her. And the teacher's like, did you tell her that? And then he's like, yeah. And he's like, let me guess, she didn't buy that bullshit. And he's like, yeah. Ray's just such a teenage boy sometimes. Like, like, and also an uncomfortable, like, very, awkward teenage boy.
Yeah.
So those moments were interesting. I also liked how he was trying to, like, save up a bunch of money. And the teacher was like, maybe you shouldn't do that. Like, maybe you shouldn't walk into a family's house and try and manage their finances. Yeah. But yeah, I think that there's, like... And I asked Dominic, I was like, how do you feel about, like, a romance between Ray and Hina? Because it feels like that is what it's building up to, especially, like, when she gets her hair cut.
Yeah.
And I was like, is this the moment he falls in love or something? Because, dear God, he's looking at her like he's seen an angel with a bowl cut. It's very interesting. So I was just like, I don't know how I feel about this. I'm both, like, really okay with it, but also, like, I'm not sure if that's what they're trying to do, but it feels that way. And I don't know how I feel about it.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't, and sometimes I hear a lot of people saying that they're like, this feels more familial to them, is something I notice. But I'm garbage, and I've shipped it since chapter 4, so.
Yeah. I mean, like, I like it, but I also am like, where did this come from? Because it seemed more familial at first, and then there's, like, all of this, and I mean, I guess that would have brought them closer. I really liked when they were studying together, or, like, when she's like, I want to go to your school, and he got so excited.
And he's so happy! And me. Yeah, I agree. I think it's weird because I feel like, again, that sudden switch, like, right at the you're my lifesaver thing feels really jarring. And then I feel like they're kind of doing, like, catch up through the rest of the series through, like, more subtle moments.
This is how she became so close and important to him, by the way, even though it's after what he thought.
It is weird. It feels like a really weird misdirection to get to this point. So I totally think, your feelings about it are really legit.
I don't dislike it. I just am like, I don't know how I feel about it. I think also because I used to think there was much bigger of an age gap. But then I thought about it and I'm like, oh wait, what is second year of high school in Japan like?
That's like 17.
Yeah, and then, so like, Hina's, like, just going into high school.
The way it's split up... Well, he's 18 now because he got held back.
Yeah, that's true.
But the way it's split up is middle school is 3 years, high school is 3 years. So, she would be 14 and he would be 18.
Yeah, which is not horrible, but also, like, I just always felt so uncomfortable with that when I was personally in high school, where it's like, oh, there's this high school kid dating this middle schooler, and I'm like, eyebrow raise?
Yeah. Yeah, if it worked like our schools did, where high school's 4 years and middle school's 2 years, I totally get that, but it's a little less weird.
Yeah.
In this case, just because of the way the school years are split up in Japan.
Yeah. I had to, like, think about it for a while, and I'm like, I'm still a little weird, but at the same time, I'm also like, they're just so similar, and, like, she's so happy, and he's so muted. It's like, they're those weird opposites attract kind of thing.
I also just feel like it's really slow burn, and, like, even where Ray is by the end of the series, he has a very, very juvenile sense of his feelings for her right now. Like, very much more like, this is, I want to cherish her and I want to protect her, but I, like, don't know why. Like, I don't think he's making
he doesn't
those
get
connections yet.
No, and I don't think she does either. Like, she feels very happy when he shows up on her school trip, which that fucked me up too.
Oh my god! Yeah, that's the scene that broke me. Fuck.
Oh, and like when he made the, like, when he's like, oh, she wouldn't be in the city where all these happy people are.
Oh, the kids are.
Yeah, she's like,
and he
like,
knew that she goes to the river.
Yeah, he's like, I'm in the wrong place. She always goes to water when she wants to cry. And I'm like, okay. Fuck you, show.
Yeah. That scene killed me.
I'm, like, leading a lot of the spoilers, but I just have so many questions, so I'm just going to bring this up, too. Akari dealing with the bullying situation was also very interesting. The scene that she had with Ray, where she was like, I want to be able to support Hina and whatever, but I'm also like, why did you have to do this kind of thing? And she feels so selfish about it. And Ray is her console in that moment.
Yeah. Very human. I think that was, again, a good moment of exemplifying, like, an older sister's reaction to this versus, like, a mother. You know, it really kind of shows where Akari is coming from and kind of her hangups while she tries to be the, you know, the maternal guardian, but also is in a place where she processes it differently.
Yeah, and the same can be said, like, when she actually goes to the parent-teacher conference and she's so, like, sure of herself, and then she gets there, and then it's just a mess. Yeah. And then Hina's the one who ends up comforting her. It's like, damn.
Yeah.
Also the scene where Ray, like, yells that he's gonna help, and then, like, Akari, like, is like, thank you for that, by the way, you're very loud. And then he attracts a bunch of angry dogs.
On the bridge! Yeah. That was so good. Oh my gosh. There's just so many incredible moments in this season. Soya being deaf. Soya is deaf.
Soya's deaf. That was a weird
yeah.
The way that's revealed too is just so, like,
at first I didn't get it. I was like, wait, what?
Yeah.
Is this guy crazy?
He's just crazy.
Well, where did they spill the wine on him and stuff, and he just kept talking?
Yeah,
like, I was like, bro, do you have a couple screws loose? Like, are you okay?
Well, and it's so sad, because they even, later when the other older shogi guy is explaining it, he's like, yeah, people just chalked it up to, oh, he's got that, like, not fully there genius thing, and it's like, oh, God.
And, like, we realize that, like, right when Ray does, too, so it's like,
oh.
He never blatantly says, oh, I'm deaf. It's just, oh, he was sleeping, so he didn't hear that the train stopped.
Yeah.
And he was the last one off the train until Ray actually shook him awake, and it's like, bro, we gotta go. And then, like, Soya's the one helping him out and stuff. But yeah, that was crazy. Do you still think he's not pretty?
I mean, he looks like a ghost.
Yeah. Dumb, but a pretty ghost.
I mean, if you're into ghosts, I guess. Yeah. I'm not into ghosts, so.
Bullshit.
Oh my god.
We're all a little bit into pretty cute ghosts. In one way or another.
I really liked the fact that I liked Ray's reflections on how he felt after playing Soya.
Yeah.
Because, you know, he wasn't, like, just crushed. He was like, I'm kind of in this solace, I'm, like, comfortable, and then he was like, but now it won't leave my head, and I want to do it. Like, I guess I was anticipating that, like, kind of like Shimada and other people, he might feel really crushed after playing him, but he was, like, driven and to pursue that again. That was really cool.
Definitely. And Soya just, like, I want more. That's another reason I want another season 3. Like, I want more Soya. Like, I want more of who he is and how he's going to impact Rei. And
yeah, I want to know when they'll meet again.
Yeah.
Shoot.
Also, Dominic, can you talk about the episode that made you cry? Because I was so excited about it.
Okay.
I was like, oh, Dominic's actually very upset and emotionally touched right now. And I was like, yes, I've been waiting for this.
So there are little parts in the shows where I would shed a tear and I'd be like, ugh. And then I would quickly wipe it away before you would look. But the last episode, like the first part of the last episode, where Rei goes back home and visits his adopted mother, and this whole part where he's just like sitting there talking to her, and like you get a lot of this inner monologue from the mother, who we've seen very, very little of before this point. Mm-hmm. And we just get into this whole retrospective of how she like viewed him as like this kind of weird kid who is like a good kid, but at the same time he causes problems in the house just by being there and just by being around these siblings who are like completely envious of him and his presence in their lives. And one, that was already fucking me up. I was already just like and then he at the end of it, he says goodbye to the dog. And the dog is like at this point is old and like getting up there in his years, which is different from how he remembers him. And I have dogs at home that live with my mom, and they're getting up there in age too. So it's like this very personal moment where I was just like not only was I relating to the at-home situation a little bit, although it's not in exactly like replicated situation, but there are some things that like, oh, I kind of get, certain aspects about this. But just the part with the fucking dog and like him saying goodbye and everything, and I was broken for like several minutes after that. I think we had to pause because I was I was just sitting there like crying about this, and yeah.
I like looked over and I was like, "Are you okay, honey?" And he's like, "I'm broken. I broke." And it was very funny, but also great and great and wonderful moment, but also just kind of funny because Dominic always tries to hide when he's being emotionally impacted by literally anything that we watch because I can't have that satisfaction. It's not allowed. But I also, in that scene, I also liked the bit where she was just like, I had a dream about like Rei was actually my kid and he was this awful child. Mm-hmm. But I was just so relieved because he was a normal, functioning, like, child.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that fucked me up, too.
You know what's interesting? I heard that that's actually, like, an extra chapter that, like, comes in later. Like, they didn't have to, by following the linear plot, include that. But I think using that as the opener to the last episode of the season was really, really just impactful.
Yeah, it was really
nicely done.
It was also all stills.
Yeah, almost entirely.
Yeah. Until he hugged the dog.
Oh, and it was so sweet. Yeah.
I feel like I've been leaning all the spoilers. Is there anything you want to talk about, Cammie, before,
I mean, I guess one more is that, and Cassie, because I messaged you on the side, but, like, I did not expect to be that emotional about, like, when Rei sees Nikaido again, but it was just so sweet and, like, just so Nikaido, and I loved it, and I started tearing up a little bit.
Yeah, especially because Shimada was like, oh, he's probably just going to be so sad and depressed, and then, like, Nikaido's just like, I just came up with this amazing move. They're going to name it after me. It's going to be the Nikaido vaccine, and everyone's going to know and love me. And Rei just sees him, and he's like, this is so Nikaido. And he doesn't even have to say that. He just starts laughing. And we very rarely get to see Rei, like, actually laugh in the show. It was very good.
Yeah. I love it.
Oh, I do know Oh, sorry, go ahead.
He just said he loves Nikaido.
He's so good. One more that I thought was really, really well done. Partially for, like, Hina's little, Hina's resolve, but also the whole, like, the moving on of Takahashi, like, the baseball player.
Yeah, because he skipped
that
town.
Yeah, that was so poignant. I loved that. Just like they went out for food, and then Hina's talking about how, like, this moment is so precious, but time is just moving on no matter, like, what she can do, so she needs to value this time, like, and then how she realized even though he'd leave, he would always be like they're the children of Marchtown, and how she didn't see him off because she was like, well, he's doing his best, I have to do my best. Like, oof, that was so good.
I also like the little inner monologue she had after that, because there was a scene in the snow, like, right before they went out where she was feeling so depressed and alone. And then she realized, even though, like, and she has this, like, she did this thing that, like, a lot of people do, and, like, I do this too. People will just focus on the negative aspects of one thing and relate it to every single time it's happened in their life. So she's like, oh, he's leaving, just like this person left. Just like my dad left. Just like mom and grandma left. Like, people just keep leaving, and I can never hold on to people. And then she realized, no, I still have all these other people around me that care about me and are very important to me, and some of those people aren't gone for good. And I was like, okay.
That was so
all
good.
right.
Like, how is she so, like, she just thinks these very poignant things for her age. The scene, actually, okay, I didn't expect for this to get me a lot, but the scene where she's talking to her grandpa about
money,
going to an expensive school and the money, and oof, that whole bit got me a bit, and I was like, fuck, I know this is exactly how, like, my parents viewed me going to college, and now I just, like, I need to call them and be like, God, like, thank you. All of that was so good.
How'd you feel about her haircut?
Like, did I like it, or like the purpose of it, or
just in general? It's just a very general question.
I actually think it's really cute how it was a situation where it wasn't just, like, a flattering haircut. It's just specifically Ray saw it in this light where she hated it and everyone else is, like, teasing her about it. But then Ray's just like, I like it. And he kept pressing on it. I thought that was really cute.
Yeah, and he, like, thought about it for a minute. He's like, I really like it.
I really like this. And then he just kept saying it.
Yeah.
And she was like, could you please stop?
She's like, well, I don't. Just stop it.
As soon as she said she was going to get her haircut, and then Akari came home, and she's, like, just bundled in the blankets, all gloom and doom, and she's like, I'm never going to leave my bedroom again. I can start school next year. But I liked how, like, the family, like, even Akari, she's like, even you are, like, making fun of me now, and told her to, like, hold, like, little dolls and stuff. I really liked when they did kind of, like, the glamour shot of when Ray was looking at her, and she was all, like, blushy.
Yeah,
I had that as my icon in a lot of things for a while, because I just thought it was a very nice pan. Also, I think she rocks short hair pretty well.
She can do most hairstyles pretty well. Like, she has a bunch.
Yeah.
Especially in the second season, and they're all adorable.
I like when she...
They are.
I like when she had, like, almost kind of like the mochi hairbands, like the little fluff balls in her hair, because that made me think about the Tamako Market overlap. I thought about that earlier. Because they're both girls who make candies with their family.
She had braids.
Mm-hmm.
I loved that. I loved her little braids. And I loved her little, I liked her whole getup when they were at the food stand.
Mm-hmm.
And she had the little, like, red dress on, and her hair, I think, was in, like, bun pigtails, if I remember correctly.
Yep.
I mean, now at this point, I'm just gushing, so unless you guys have other scenes, I will wrap us up.
Anything else you wanted to talk about?
I did want to quickly go back to, the Yanagi thing.
Okay.
So...
Oh, yeah!
The one thing I really liked about that is, like, you have... Like, there's Shimada. Like, Shimada, his whole thing was, like, how he was playing shogi, and he didn't know. Like he was, like, had this internal battle, whether it was actually, like, pleasurable or good for him. Like, it was something, like, was this the right decision in my life? And, you know, he had that whole flashback where he was like, oh, I have...
Even in my perfect dream, I was still playing shogi.
Yeah, and, you know, where he didn't pursue it professionally and stuff. And then you have, like, Ray, who's also who also has this, like, inner dilemma where he's like, oh, I felt like shogi was the only path for me. And so there's, like, these two characters that are it's kind of framed in this sort of gray area of, like, was shogi the correct choice? Like, was there anything else I could do? And then you have Yanagi, where, like, shogi is, like, this man's life. Like, this is, like, everything to him. And he's, like, doing everything he can to, like, hold on to that and, you know, the idea, like... And then there's, like, the photographer guy who's, like, worried about, you know, what he's going to do, like, retirement. Like, what am I going to do without, like, my work or whatever? Like, my profession. I don't know. I just really like that aspect to his character in contrast to the other two. Because I don't think it's something that's, like, brought up very much. Like, this idea that someone's, like, work, like, what they do specifically can be, like, what is the most important, like, thing in their life, I guess.
Oh, yeah. And that's, like, touched on a few times, even with, like, Hina. Like, she asks Rei, like, when did you decide you wanted to be a pro shogi player?
Yeah.
And that's one of the few times he actually even opens up saying, because at first he gives a very generic answer of, oh, I think it was, like, the second year of middle school or something. And then he's like, actually, no. Like, I never really decided this. Yeah. Like, I just... And then Hina said, you know, I really want to be passionate about sweets, but half of that I don't know if it's just because I'm trying to distract myself. And then you've got people like Yanagi who are like, I have so much burdens to bear that they've become just essentially who I am. And if I can't help carry these people or carry myself, like, what the fuck am I supposed to do?
Yeah, like, what is there for me, basically? Yeah, like, I just love that portrayal.
Yeah.
And that whole episode, like, I can't express enough how good that last episode with him is. The final show with the match with him and Shimada. It's so good. So good. But yeah, that's all I just wanted to gush about how good that is.
There's a lot of things we could gush about. We'd be here all night, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm glad you did, though, because that is a unique arc in the story that, like, yeah, you can't really address without spoilers. So thank you for bringing us back to it. Okay. Anyway, before we gush anymore, we are going to close out this episode for today. So this has been episode 78 of the Annie Chat Box. We thank you for those of you that stayed for the spoiler room and tuned in, and we hope that you have a great night.
Oyasumi.
Bye-bye.